Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Red Letter Challenge. Today is day 28 of 40 of our challenge. And in our day 28 challenge, our theme today is based on Mark chapter 6, verse 37, where Jesus says, "You give them something to eat." Someone else will take care of that. How many times have we said that? Someone will take care of that. When we hear about problems, sometimes our first response isn't, how can we help? But rather, someone else will do it. Today's question from Jesus tells us it's not about someone else taking care of anything. God is telling us that it's our job to feed the hungry. He's calling his followers to take care of things themselves. That's someone else's problem, is not in the vocabulary of Jesus or his followers. The truth is, we all have gifts or talents or possessions that we can offer to the world around us. Hear this story from Peter Segal. When Morgan was a young woman living in New York City, she had trouble finding herself. She was very uncertain of herself, and she had become obsessed with Mother Teresa. For some reason, Morgan thought Mother Teresa was the epitome of what a human being should be. One day, Morgan found out that Mother Teresa was coming to New York and found out where she was staying. So Morgan parked on a curb outside of her hotel, hoping to get a glimpse of her. Then a car pulled up and Mother Teresa got out. Morgan ran up to Mother Teresa and said, "I'm so glad to meet you. The work you do is so important, and I want to come to Calcutta and work with you." Mother Teresa shook her head and said, "No, you don't want to do this work because you think it's good. You do this work because you love the poor people of Calcutta so much that you can't possibly bear being away from them. That's when you come and do this work." Morgan realized that Mother Teresa had busted her a little bit, but in a nice way. Mother Teresa said, "What do you do?" Morgan said, "Nothing important. I work in a theater and I help put on plays. What use is that?" Mother Teresa replied, "There are many different kinds of famine in this world. In my country, there is a famine of the body. In this country, there is a famine of the spirit. Stay here and feed your people." All of us have something to offer. The God of the universe, the one who has access to everything, invites us to be a part of a miracle with him. God doesn't need us to participate in his miracles with him, but he wants us to. Today's quote comes from the miraculous story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people with only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The crowds had been with Jesus all day and were hungry. The disciples wanted to send them home to get food when Jesus told them, "Then you get them something to eat." Can you imagine what they must have been thinking? How are they going to feed them? This man is out of his mind. Jesus was testing their faith. Andy Stanley describes this story well. What do you do when Jesus is actually standing there telling you to do something you don't know you can't do? You do know that you can't do. Apparently you do what we do. You make excuses and you tell him things he already knows. "I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not resourced enough. Get someone else." But Jesus says, "Just bring me what you do have and I'll work with that. Bring me your limited education, your lack of experience, along with your fear and insecurity, and watch what I can do." If we, or the people in our churches, ever get to the place where we are willing to make what we have available to God, amazing things will happen. For whatever reason, God has chosen to work with us in redeeming and restoring the world. He's chosen us to be the people who speak and act on his behalf. God believes that you can make a difference. That's why he's chosen you. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 10, Paul calls us co-workers or co-laborers with God. We've already been called by God to work with him and given the tools to grow his kingdom. Don't wait for permission from me or from someone else to do what God has put in your heart. God has called you, and he's filled you up with the Holy Spirit to give you everything you need to make a difference in this world. You may feel like you don't have a lot to offer, but I want you to know that same God that turned a boy's lunch into food for 5,000 people can do the same for you. God can do a lot with a little. Here's the whole story as found in Matthew chapter 14. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They said to him, "We have only 5 loaves here and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing. Then he broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. God can do a lot with a little. God has given you something that someone else could use. What is it? Use your resources today to help someone today. Have a great day. We'll see you again soon.